Hello and welcome to Boomer Blast NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. Tonight I'm joined by Drew in Shug's absence. He has decided that he's going to hit the town and hit the drink, but we'll carry on regardless. It's crunch time as far as fantasy football is concerned, and when it comes to make or break, week 14 can be no bigger. With so many injuries and bye weeks and players on form and not on form, we're going to try our best to help you. And Drew, we'll start nowhere else but the injury to Kenneth Walker. Now, it's looking like it's touch and go for him. It's been described as days to weeks. God knows what that means. If you have Kenneth Walker in your team, where are you looking to replace him?
It's a difficult one. It really just depends on who you've got available to you there. Looking at the Seahawks, you're talking maybe DJ Dallas, Homer, something like that to come in and replace him. But I'm pretty sure his Homer got a wee bit of an injury as well at the moment.
So the good
I'm
news,
unsure.
the good news with Travis Homer is that he's back in training. Tony Jones didn't participate in training yesterday as well. So Homer looks to be the one that will get his chance there.
Yeah, I think that's obviously who you're looking at. But yeah, it's an absolute killer of an injury for Kenneth Walker because he's been an absolute superstar the past few weeks. And I know that you'll be feeling that one very sore.
I know, but it's a weird one because they've gave no real indication to, is it a long-term injury, is it short-term, like what is the duration of the injury, and really we don't know. And in the week of all weeks where there's 6 bye weeks and basically waiver wires are drying up, like running backs are really hard to get at the moment, like it's hard to look at anyone to sort of fill in there. So if you've got someone on your bench that's, as you say, a steady Eddie, there's got to be somebody that can fill in there for you. Like, you're going to be stuck to fill anything with the quality of Walker, but it's one that you would say, can I just wait and see because we don't know the time frame?
Yeah, I definitely think you just wait to see and see where he comes. You know what I mean? See what happens as come Sunday, the game.
Yeah, and if you do pick up someone like Travis Homer, it's one of the ones. Are you confident enough to start him? I mean, he is going to get like the full bulk of the snaps, but in that case, he's not going to be near enough the same quality as Walker. If you know what I mean. Walker is the first proper running back since Marshawn Lynch that has really made his mark at the Seahawks. So could we see someone else coming in and doing that sort of job? We've seen Travis Homer play before. Probably not. But it's
Nah, I
an
don't think so.
interesting one. I think it's a case of wait and see. So let's see. Let's just wait and see. Producer David sending me notes through.
I know. I think I'm getting into trouble as well.
Just get your bloody headphones on, mate, for God's sake.
Right, I'll go try and get them, right?
Kieran, keep it talking. Just keep the crowd going, mate. You got to warm them
Yes, behind the scenes look. I can't believe for a minute we're over a minute into the show. We're a minute 21 into the show, and we've not had a comment from Toasty via YouTube Live yet. So if you're watching, guys, please make sure you're commenting, send in your questions. If you've got any lineup dilemmas, which I completely believe you will, given the amount of injuries and bye weeks in week 14, get them sent in and we'll answer them towards the halfway mark in the end of the show. That's what we're doing this for. So thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribing, even enough.
Hello, can you hear me?
There he is. We've had a comment from Toasty.
Perfect,
He's there.
mate, perfect.
So Toasty has now commented for any of our listeners who are watching on YouTube, saying, "Ugh, why is this idiot on? Where's Shug?" So Shug has a night out tonight. He finds that more important than being here. So we've drafted Drew in. You've not even said you're happy to be here, Drew. I think that's a bit of a disgrace to start with.
I think it's a bit of a disgrace you assumed that Toasty was talking about me, not you.
That's true, and he's also said that you're a liability.
I don't have a clue where this is coming from. This man has a personal vendetta against me.
It does. It's because you beat him to the championship last year. But when we asked Shug would he be tuning in as well, he said no, he wouldn't be tuning in. It's just not the same without him. He said about himself, he's like the Bulls without Jordan. He's also like the Beatles without Pete Doherty. That man's off the rails. Anyway, we'll move on to injury news as well. A big one, Lamar Jackson, PCL strain, which tends to be around 1 to 3 weeks. We've seen Zach Wilson with a similar injury at the start of the season, who was out around about the 8-week mark. Now, in a week where quarterbacks are very, very scarce, and we'll get on to talking about one in the second half of the show, which we think's a decent enough plug and play. Like, where does this leave fantasy owners with Lamar Jackson? Do you think Tyler Huntley's a good enough backup to just stick in there and roll with?
I think was it last season or season before, Tyler Huntley came in and covered for Lamar a bit, and I think he done pretty well. You know, he's kind of similar to Lamar in terms of he will rush, he will pass, but I think if you're struggling, you've not got another quarterback to come in and fill ahead of Lamar Jackson. I think Huntley is the ideal pickup for it. You know, he's going to be throwing the ball to the same players. He's gonna have the same defensive players, obviously in the pocket and things like that, so he can get his yards rushing and things like that. So yeah, I think Tyler Huntley for me is the obvious replacement if you are struggling for a quarterback.
Yeah, and for me, I would use that word struggling very, very heavily, because although I do rate Tyler Huntley, I think he's a good quarterback. They've now brought in someone of the name Hundley as now his backup as a QB3, so let's not get them mixed up. But in terms of the Baltimore Ravens, I think on offense they've been terrible this season. They've got no run game. They've struggled to get sort of the wide receiver game going. Devin Duvernay at the start of the season, it looked like he was going to be a fantasy rock star and completely and utterly disappeared. It's just not been good enough at the Ravens. And in terms of Jackson, it's shown on his performances and his fantasy points that it's affected him big time. So in terms of Huntley, if you're struggling, then go for it. But I don't know. I don't know. For me, it's one of these ones. If there's better out there, I'd go and get it with a better matchup. I do like him up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they've been decent enough, I think, that since Watt came back, that it's one of the ones. I'm not quite too sure. If there is someone better on your waivers or that you can go and grab, like, go and get them. But if you really need to, I'd put Huntley in there.
Yeah, I think if it was the Steelers at the start of the season, just after the loss, I'd probably say Huntley's maybe a more viable option. But I've been really impressed with the Steelers over the past few weeks since Watt came back. They've not obviously allowed as many points being scored, and they look a bit more solid defensively now with Watt coming back. So yeah, I would maybe, like you said, see what's out there first of all before you make a decision on Huntley. If you're really struggling, then go for him.
Perfect. And I'm going to jump to one of the questions here because we've got a good one. I like the lineup dilemmas one, and we've had a question in here from Titan CW. He said, Drew, pick one for running back: Zonovan Knight, Cam Akers, or James Cook. Who do you like there?
I think the three of them are very, very decent. The two that stand out to me are Zonovan Knight and Cam Akers, obviously both playing in the no, they're not actually. Sorry. Yes, that's the two. That's the two that kind of stand out to me. I think Cam Akers, he's going to be running the ball a lot, especially with Stafford being out. You know, don't think they really trust a quarterback throwing it, and especially when you've not got Cup to throw it to, you're throwing it to wide receivers 2, 3, and even 4 at some places. And so yeah, I think Cam Akers for me would be the obvious choice there. Yeah, he's had a poor start to the season, and I'm sure Shug won't be a massive fan of me say Cam
I love that.
Akers, but he's not here, so I'll say Cam Akers.
I love that. I'm on the fence between Zonovan White and Cam Akers. James Cook, I'd pump the brakes a wee bit on it just now. I think it's going to be a snap share between him and Devin Singletary. But in terms of Cam Akers, 2 touchdowns last week. It looks like he's going to get the red zone snaps. In terms of Zonovan White, okay, Michael Carter returned to practice this week. It looks like he's going to get thrown into the exact same role that he had. But Salah did say that Zonovan White would play a role as well here. He would still have his role there. I do like Bam Knight. I think he's done very well in the absence of Carter. But at the same time, if Carter's fit and available, he's the main man there. But yeah, I'm riding the Cam Akers train with you because I thought Kieran Williams would do well. I don't know why you're smiling at me like that.
Because you keep saying two different players. You keep going through Knight and White.
Knight and White, for God's sake, I'm all over the place here, man. It's alright, we'll cut it out in the audio version. No, so to answer your question, Titan CW, I'd be rolling with Cam Akers, and Drew agrees with that as well. Just like we say, James Cook snap share, we just don't know how much Donovan Knight's going to be, so it just seems the safest bet, although I'm not the biggest fan of playing Thursday night players. What I will say, do you know who I've went with tonight? I picked up the Raiders D, who I think are number 30 defence, but much to your point, Drew, if Baker Mayfield starts tonight, like how well is he going to know that offense? There's going to be a lot of run plays in there. Yep. Realistically, no real wide receiver targets in the absence of Kupp, Robinson, maybe Van Jefferson's the only one there that you would take seriously. But yeah, go for Cam Akers. So if anyone's got anyone else, chuck them in. I can see Toast in the comments as well saying that Cam Akers this week as well. Anyway, we'll move on, Drew. Other injury news around the league. Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey are both limited. Is this one to monitor if you are an owner of each of them? Deebo Samuel seems to have had his hamstring problems, and now this looks like a quad problem. McCaffrey, I think, has got a knee irritation, and there's no Eli Mitchell, who's out for the season. Where would you be looking here? Possibly Mason?
I think it's the obvious choice, isn't it? Or, you know, it'll obviously already be picked up in a lot of leagues, but if obviously Deebo Samuel's out, then you're looking at Brandon Ayuk as well, isn't he? He'll probably get a lot of targets. But hopefully for myself in terms of my team, if Deebo's out, George Kittle maybe. So yeah, but I think obviously Mason's the obvious choice there, especially with McCaffrey being out.
Yeah, it's a funny one. When Deebo was out with this hamstring injury, Brandon Ayuk I thought was outstanding. Fantasy football wise, points every week. You're talking double digits and upwards. When they play though, I think Ayuk suffers. Kittle possibly as well. You'll know better than me, having him as your tight end, has suffered slightly. For me, when Kittle's on form, he's one of the best tight ends in the league. But in terms of when Samuel and McCaffrey are playing and the way that they use them, then it is one to monitor. If McCaffrey's out and Samuel's fit, then that's a different kettle of fish, where they're going to use Samuel so much more in that run game, because I can't see them leaning on Mason as much as we would expect. The other way about, if Samuel's not fit and McCaffrey is, then Ayuk becomes so much more relevant in that case, and in your case, possibly good in the way of Kittle.
Yeah, but you need to remember as well, 49ers will be using QB3 as well.
Yeah, true, very true.
You know, so
Brock Purdy. So I think he done all right. All the indications seem that the locker room really like him. He's looking to improve very much, and it's a strange situation that they're in now. And to the Jimmy Garoppolo injury as well, it looks like if they get deep into the playoffs, then he might be back fit, because the injury's not as bad as first seemed, and it's not going to need surgery. So the 49ers, I think they're due a wee bit of luck, considering the players that they've brought in, and they're making a big push for it. They're an exciting team. They've been really unlucky.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I like the 49ers. I like watching them, you know, especially with the players that they've got. You know what I mean? Ayuk, Samuel, McCaffrey, Kittle, you know what I mean? Their offense is absolutely stacked. It's just a shame if obviously Garoppolo's maybe not going to be back for the playoffs if they make it there, and if they make it into the late rounds, you know, because I think they could be a force to be reckoned with if they had that full offense plus the QB.
Yeah, and I'm on board with you with that. They're great to watch, and good luck. I'm kind of pulling for them a wee bit this year. I don't know why. I think I like Samuel so much. He's that one guy that I always like in my fantasy team for obvious reasons.
I can't believe we've been through 3 injuries. 3 out of 3 of them are in your team.
No. Who does the running order? Who knows, eh?
I know.
McCaffrey's also in Shug's team, so there's another one.
Yeah, I know.
I know, but keep the comments coming, guys. One for Stevie Waugh touching on the Thursday night games. He's saying Thursday night players is like having the Saturday 12:30 game on your accumulator, talking British football terms. 100% right. If that game's not coming up, then that's it. It's scrapped. Your bets are done. But we'll move on the injury front, Drew. And guess what? He's not on my team. He's on your team.
No way.
This one.
No
He
way.
is. Wait, I actually think he might not be. David Njoku, have you got him?
Nah, mate. Nah, he's not my team
I'm
now.
wrong then. I'm wrong. Right. This week, David Njoku is expected to return, which is a huge boost because tight ends are prime real estate this year. And when he gets going, he's one of the best. And when I say best, I don't mean Travis Kelce. I mean that tier where he could score you 10 points a week. Anyway, different story now with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Do you see his fantasy stock going up now that he's back and now that he's got a different quarterback there, Drew?
I really don't know because I made a massive gamble last week, and unfortunately, it did not pay off for me. Stashed Deshaun Watson since week 1 in fantasy, and played him last week, and he was absolutely honking. So,
Yeah.
and I had Cooper, and I had Chubb. So 3 of those players, every single one of them, absolutely honking. So, did not do me any favours at all. I think it will take a bit of time with Deshaun Watson coming back in. In terms of Njoku, I just really don't know. I can't really expect too much from them. And who have they got this week? They've not got quite a tough matchup. So against
they've got the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I was going to say that, the Bengals. Yeah, so I just don't know.
The Cincinnati Bengals, who are on absolute fire just now. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure on the Browns. There's maybe going to be a sneaky sit-em coming up from that team.
yeah.
But we'll get to that. But in terms of Njoku, I think he's a solid tight end when fit. It's just a case of wait and see how it goes at the Browns. But I'd certainly be starting them, man. There's 6 teams on bye weeks this week, and guys like Cole Kmet are included in that. I know a lot of people, he's not had the best season. Robert Tonyan as well. Like, there's going to be folk that are struggling for tight ends, and why not start them? Throw them in there. Don't know how it'll end up, but yeah, throw them in there. But we'll cover a couple more here. Courtland Sutton did not participate again with a hamstring injury. Jerry Jeudy also limited at the Broncos, Drew. Now, the reason I bring this up
Because he's
is
on your team.
Wow, you're on to me here. The reason I bring these 2 guys up is not so much just the injuries. Are there any Broncos players at the moment that are fantasy relevant? Because for me, it doesn't matter if they both play. I think you're running a real tightrope to play them in the first place, given how bad Russell Wilson actually is and the Broncos have been. And see, if it wasn't for that Broncos defence, they'd be in a whole lot of trouble. So what I'm saying to you here is, if any of them are fit, or if either one of them are fit, are you happy to start them? Because for me, that's risky.
Individual players in terms of the Broncos, I would probably say no. There's no point in starting any of them in your fantasy team. Are they going to score over 12 points? I'm unsure, if I'm being totally honest with you. Broncos don't score many touchdowns, either receiving touchdowns or running touchdowns. I think possibly the best player you could play for the Broncos is the kicker, McManus, is it?
Yeah.
I think he would be the most fantasy relevant Broncos player, or the Broncos defense, like you said, because they're pretty good defensively wise. Patrick Surtain and stuff like that. So I would say no, there's nobody there for me that would be fantasy relevant, apart from Brandon McManus.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with you. But keep the questions coming in the comments section if you're watching us live on YouTube. And if you can, guys, please make sure you're subscribing and give us a like as well. We're shortly going to go to a break. And Drew, I'm going to hit you with a question here. before the break, and if you can answer this in the comments as well, in no particular order, the Pro Bowl vote was this week. Can you name the top 5 vote getters in no particular order? Hold there just now, because we're going to go to a break. Super close-up producer David, I know you love this. I hate it, but yes, here we go. Big thank you to our sponsor this week of the show. It's none other than Manscaped. It's never too early to play holiday music, and it's never too early to start thinking about gifts. Whether it's for a friend or the friends in your pants, you can make this a season to be jolly with Manscaped. Do your little drummer boy a favour and use the Lawnmower 4.0 to avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Then add in Manscaped's top-of-the-line shower products to have the people thinking, all I want for Christmas is you. Santa cares about his sack, and so should you. Look nice when you get naughty by going to manscaped.com and use the code BoomerBus20 for free shipping and 20% off. Now, Drew, I know you can't vouch for the products because you've not got one, but all I can say is they are fantastic, and there's no chance I'm giving you a loan of it because it's done the job. I maybe look clean cut, but it's not the upstairs that counts, it's downstairs, and I can guarantee you I'm looking good.
I was going to say, I hope you're not using it on your face and down there.
No, it's not the curtains that counts, it's the carpet. But once again, thanks to our sponsor this week, Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BoomerBus20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code BoomerBus20. Manscaped, get your jingle bells in order for the holidays. Drew, I hit you with a question before the break. The Pro Bowl vote was this week. Can you name the top 5 vote getters? I'll give you points if you get 3 of them.
Right, okay. Well, I'm going to go, I'm sure he's getting the most receiving yards so far. Tyreek Hill.
1.
Also, I think he broke a few records so far this season. Justin Jefferson.
2. Oh, you're doing well, man. No pressure,
Ball
but
knowledge.
Toasty has them all in the comments.
Well, most receiving yards, I'm going to go for the main man behind him, Tua.
3. Oh, you are on fire. Have you looked at this?
Nah, no looked
You're
at
doing
it.
well. Let's see if you can get all 5. Right, so you've got Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, and Tua so far. You've got 2 to get.
I'm going to say one of the most exciting players to watch, Patrick Mahomes.
You have got 4. You have got 1 to get. I cannot
Now,
believe you've got all 4 of these. Out all the players in this, I understand these guys have been on absolute fire. This is unbelievable.
I'm going to say the last one. I'm stuck between a few because that's 2 wide receivers. It's not going to be another quarterback. I just don't know if it's a running back or a wide receiver.
Yeah, I'll give you a hint. It's neither. That should give it away.
Oh, Travis Kelce then.
5 out of 5, man. Well done. Do you know who wouldn't have
There
got
you
that?
go. Shug.
Yes.
He
Producer
would have
David's
said
put it-
Emmanuel Sanders.
Manuel Sanders, Cam Akers, Tyreek Hill. And there you go. Toasty's got it up on the screen in the correct order. I think that's correct. So number 1 was Tua, number 2, Justin Jefferson, number 3, Patrick Mahomes, number 4, Tyreek Hill, and number 5, Travis Kelce. Not bad, eh? And Jamie in the comments is saying, Drew, you are absolutely at it.
Says the man sitting at home that can open up his web browser and Google it.
Always got a comment from Talking Balls podcast saying, I was going to say those. LOL. No, you weren't. Drew's on fire here. Put your money on him.
That's it.
Anyway, we'll move on and we'll look to some of the matchups that we like and maybe not so much like this week, Drew. I'll come to you first. Who are you loving this week? Who are you like, right, he's an automatic starter, let's roll with him?
For me, it's DeAndre Swift this week. I think he's an absolute great candidate to start ahead of any running back in your team. Last week it seemed like it was a bit of a changing of the guard in Detroit. He started ahead of Williams. He got more snaps ahead of Williams, more touches, and he had more red zone looks ahead of Williams. So for me, DeAndre Swift is the starter this week. So yeah, they've got a very good matchup against the Vikings, who surrendered 6 touchdowns and the second highest fantasy points to running backs since week 10. So for me, DeAndre Swift is an obvious start.
Yeah, you've got all your ducks in a row there. I'm loving the stats, Drew. 100% agree with you here. I think a lot of DeAndre Swift owners would have been frustrated given the touchdowns that Jamal Williams had been getting, and every time DeAndre Swift seemed to take it down the field, it was Williams taking it into the end zone. Like you said, last week's game showed a changing of the guard. It was back, the ball was back into Swift's court, and the fact that this had started to happen, I wouldn't have any worries about starting him whatsoever this week. He had been carrying an injury, he'd been out for a while with an injury, and they spoke about bringing him back in, but bringing him in on a snap count and gradually bringing him back in. Now back to full health, you can expect the same proper results as you've always expected from Swift. But we're going to stick with the Detroit Lions because my start is also from there. Given the week that there's 6 bye weeks now, whoever set up this schedule just does not care about fantasy football whatsoever. 6 bye weeks in crunch time, week 14 in fantasy football. So there's going to be a hell of a lot of people left without quarterbacks, given injuries to Stafford, Garoppolo, Lamar Jackson. I've probably missed some as well. There's been that many. My start this week's Jared Goff. I never thought I would say that. Now, for me, Goff, I think he's been good. He's been steady, averaging 15.55 fantasy points, which isn't really superstar behaviour, but he's up against the Vikings defence. Now, you touched on it there. They're also 25 against the quarterback, all right? See, when you're thrown to a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's easily one of the best wide receivers in the league at the moment in terms of form, you'd really get a chance in fantasy football. Throw in that they've now got Jameson Williams back in the team. I say back in the team. He's been a pickup with a huge reputation, and he's going to do well. Like I said as well, guys are going to be missing folk like Justin Fields at quarterback, Aaron Rodgers for the folk that had been struggling as well. So for me, Jared Goff has got to be started, especially if you're struggling for a quarterback. I think the projected for him is 17.7 points this week, which is better than his average.
Can't
You
disagree
agree
with
with
that.
me, Drew?
Yep, I can't disagree with that.
Anyone listening on a podcast can't see you nodding your head, man. But I had actually put Pacheco down, but given that the stats against him you informed me before the show, we scrapped that, didn't we?
Yeah. So that's where I came up with a wee DeAndre Swiftly. Came up with that swiftly.
Why aren't we starting Pacheco?
Because who is he playing again? Because I think I said to you it was the Bengals, didn't I? But I don't think they're not playing the Bengals.
You've got it completely wrong, aye. So we scrapped that anyway. So
start
DeAndre Swift.
No, it's whoever they're playing. Then they've only allowed 3 running touchdowns or something like that.
I wish you had told Producer Dave that you were going to scrap this player before you prepped all the graphics, you bloody rats.
We're going to do it anyway. They're playing against the Denver Broncos, so there you go.
Aye.
Denver Broncos, like I said, absolutely rock solid on defense. It's just the offense is non-existent. So that's why. But we'll look to the matchups that we don't like, all right? And in the comments as well, I see a few coming in. Keep them coming, guys. We'll get to them at the end of the show. And Drew, I'm going to say the first one that I do not like, and I would be sitting this week, actually plays in your team, and I've got it right this time. Amari Cooper. I'm just not liking that matchup. I'm just not liking Deshaun Watson at quarterback. I know he's seen 9 targets last week, but only 4 receptions for 40 yards. It was a real poor week for Cooper. And for me, he's got to be sitted. It's not worth the risk. I could be completely wrong here, and this might take folk by surprise, but I'm not buying Cooper this week at all. I just don't see the Browns being decent with Watson at quarterback until next season.
That's the thing. I thought I was on to a winner with having him last week up against who they played last week? Had a good matchup. Can't remember. And obviously, definitely worked against me. But if I had better players available on my bench, I would probably be agreeing with you. But because of the buys that are in this week, unfortunately, probably have no option but to play Amari Cooper. If possibly Cordarrelle Patterson was available, or who else? I've got somebody else that's on a buy. He's quite a big player for me. Alvin Kamara. If they were available, I probably would be sitting him. But unfortunately, buys come and he needs to play.
Exactly. And who are you looking at? If you had them this week, who would you be looking at sitting?
For me, you won't probably like this one, and if Bobby's listening, he won't be liking this one. For me, it's Darius Slayton. Slayton needs to sit this week. He's projected at 11.25 points, but he's got a very, very tough matchup against the Eagles' defence, who are number 5 against a wide receiver. And also the Eagles' defence has allowed the fewest fantasy points to perimeter receivers. And the perimeter is where Slayton runs 70% of his routes. So for me, Darius Slayton is on the bench this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game for the Giants. I do like that it's on TV in the UK. It's one of the Sky Sports games this week. And also next week, the Washington game has been flexed as well. So two huge divisional games for the Giants. But I don't know. It's going to be a tough game. Slayton as well is probably going to be the one that's possibly going to see double coverage, given the lack of wide receivers at the Giants. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on this one, but given again that the injuries and the bye weeks, if there's better options there, start them. I just don't know. Wide receiver 1, it is one of the ones. But listen, we could sit here and say the very obvious choices, but it's a bit more entertaining when we put our neck on the line and take a beating in the comments when it doesn't work out so much. But I've seen a bit of love for producer Dave in the comments. Producer Dave, I'm seeing a wee bit of name calling for me and Drew there as well. Are you there? Let's see. There we go. In the comments, yes, Dave, fight those 2 Muppets. I've got your back. He's not going to shag you, mate.
I know.
Yeah, look at that picture, David, man. What a beard that is, by the way.
It's coming back in a big way.
It's mate. You need Manscaped.
Have you got a code for that by any chance?
Yes, Boomer Bus 20 for 20% off and free shipping. There you go. Here, right off the bat. Anyway, Drew, big news this week in the NFL. When we talk about quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield has been claimed by the Rams. Now, I spoke about earlier picking up the Raiders because I don't feel the Rams are going to do much. If you're really struggling this week, and I mean really struggling, would you be looking at picking up Mayfield?
If I'm being totally honest, it depends. Like, if every other quarterback had died and nobody else was, and there was nobody else left, I would possibly think about it. That's the only way I would take Baker Mayfield. I seen something earlier on, like, how can you be so bad at your job but consistently get other jobs? That's
crazy,
the thing I don't understand. He must have a more lied on CV than your pal Blaine.
Whoa, we're going there. Yes, somebody check out Mayfield's LinkedIn.
Aye.
No, but in all fairness, I thought he'd done well towards the tail end of his Browns career. Bit of a sour taste in his mouth when they brought in Deshaun Watson to replace him. He then ends up in a horrible place at the Panthers, who then sacked their head coach. Seems to have he fell third in the pecking order there, asked for his release, he got released, and then the Rams pick him up, and I think they've picked him up at a snippet of something like 1.35 million they would owe on his wages. So for me, in fantasy terms, no, I wouldn't touch him, especially this week that he's only had a few days to prepare on the playbook. But I don't know. It just depends what happens this week. No bye weeks next week. This is the last week of byes. We're going to be heading into fantasy playoffs. This is the last week of the regular season. A lot of fantasy leagues around the world. So for me, I wouldn't be touching Mayfield with a barge pole. And I know a couple of our quarterback news around the league that David Mills is now going to be the back end starter at the Texans. And also Marcus Mariota has been dropped at the Falcons. And for me, that's a difficult one, Drew, that Mariota's lost the starting job there. But there's more to it. I think he's owed something like 12 million for next year if he plays. So that's one to watch there as well. A bit of a bummer for Mariota owners, especially given the week that it is. But yeah, a lot of news around the league in terms of quarterbacks. But another guy who we seem to talk about every single week on here, and you see him spoke about everywhere, is Odell Beckham Jr. And I'm fed up saying his name on here, but it's headline after headline after headline every week with him. Now, if you look back to the 2021 season, he scored a total of 85.1 fantasy points. Now, that's not good enough in fantasy football terms. Now, the reason we're going to talk about him now is he went to the Cowboys. The Cowboys weren't convinced by him, and not only were they not convinced, the owner went public on a local radio show, Jerry Jones, and basically said that they're not convinced by his knee. Now, Jerry Jones said, I'm not confident at all, and so that's the issue. Now we all realise that the issue of health, obviously alluding to his ACL injury, which has happened for the second or third time, the issue of availability is here every time. Just this one is very obvious and very pointed towards his injury that occurred last year in the Super Bowl. Now, Drew, in fantasy terms, are we going to see Odell Beckham Jr. this year?
I don't think so. No. I think you'll probably see him, if anything, go to a team just right before the playoffs, and go for a Super Bowl run. That's the only way I could see him going to a team, because if somebody's going to take a kind of punt on him just now, if always Jerry Jones is saying that he's not convinced by his knee, other teams are probably going to think that as well. Are they going to get him in just now and then throw him into the latter weeks of the season where he could get injured, or keep him for obviously the run into the Super Bowl? I think they'll probably be more than likely to do the latter. But what you need to remember with OBG is he's a big game player. You know what I mean? Arguably, the Rams don't win that Super Bowl if it's not for OBJ. That's
very true. He looked like he was the most targeted player up until he went off injured, and then they flicked a switch on Cooper Kupp. But I actually got it wrong. In fact, I didn't get it wrong. Producer David got it wrong. Did you see that fantasy points number just magically changed there? In 2021, he scored 129.1 fantasy points. Producer David. Good enough to own up to your mistakes.
No, that was standard points that I hadn't made the conversion to PPR. That's totally my fault.
Good man. It's okay. But no, I think it stinks a wee bit for Jerry Jones. The whole thing stinks to me in terms of Odell Beckham Jr.'s side. Is he as healthy as what we think? Probably not. But we know what he wants, and that's a long-term deal that's going to secure him for the next possibly 3 years. Now, for him to knock back down a physical, or the physicals that he has done haven't been convincing, and that he still wants like a multiple-year deal, stinks to me that he isn't as healthy as what he says he is. But I think it's poor on behalf of Jerry Jones to come out and make this public, because there is other teams interested in him, and at the end of the day, it is a guy just trying to get a new contract. But fantasy terms, you're correct. We won't see him this season for fantasy football.
For me, the obvious place for him to go is the Giants. It's so glaringly obvious, really, really struggling wide receiver wise. They've got nobody practically. He'd be a perfect fit, absolute
The
perfect.
only the only doubt for me is that the talk is it won't be available until mid-January, which I don't know. Are the Giants going to be around the playoffs by mid-January? That would be a huge ask. I can't see it myself, being sitting here being bluntly honest. But you're then looking towards next season, because why would you pay a player that can't play till mid-January when your season's
Yeah, exactly.
possibly over? So I think Beckham, if he's going to target a team, it's going to be a team that's got a Super Bowl run. Like you said, they're probably going to pick him up to throw him in there, knowing that he's got big plays in him. But in terms of the here and now, I just can't see a perfect fit there. There's too much noise surrounding him. Things are a bit poisonous in the dressing room. Producer David isn't a fan at all, and he's also fed up of us talking about him. And it's about time this saga ended. He just moves on and looks towards, gets himself fit and healthy, and looks towards next season. But we are fastly running out of time. Drew, as ever, you have been a fantastic guest. So we're going to go to a few questions from the comment section on our YouTube live stream. Okay. From Stevie Wall, picked up Perrine 4 weeks ago. Has he become a guaranteed starter? I think that's a great question. I'm going to let you take that one, Drew.
A guaranteed starter just really depends on Joe Mixon, doesn't it? And what is Joe Mixon's injury designation at the moment?
Yeah,
Is
he'll
he
play
still
this week.
questionable? Yeah.
He is questionable on most fantasy apps, but they're expecting him to play this week.
So I just don't call Perrine a guaranteed starter. If Mixon's firing, you look to the week that Mixon scored 5 touchdowns. How many points did Perrine get? You're probably talking about 4 or 5 points. So
Yeah.
it depends obviously how wide your league is. It's just so hard to call it because obviously Mixon was available. Mixon was obviously running the ball all the way up to the red zone, and then Perrine was coming out of the red zone and obviously scored the touchdowns. Scored 2 or 3 that week, I think it was, Kieran, wasn't it? And then
Yes, you were sitting next to me and I lost the plot.
yes, and I think I was playing you as well.
Correct, yes.
Yeah,
Lucky.
so I wouldn't call him a guaranteed starter. Definitely a good player to have there. In terms of a handcuff for the running back, if Mixon drops out, then he goes in quite easily. But yeah, I wouldn't say a guaranteed starter.
Yeah, not for me either. If Mixon's fit, Mixon plays, and Pirine goes back into his role as RB2 there. But let's see our next question from the comments.
So this one here is from the guys at Talking Balls podcast. They just said Garrett Wilson, and it's when we were talking about our start and sit 'em. So I think they just kind of want to get your input and where you think he lies in terms of start and sit-ins for this week.
Okay, Garrett Wilson this week, I'm not sure if I would touch him. I'm not sure if I would start him. Corey Davis seems to be emerging as one of Mike White's favourite targets, but if I'm right in saying they're up against the Buffalo Bills this week, whose defence are number 3 in fantasy football, I'm just not sure if you would be starting them. But the common theme of this show today has been that there's so many buys this week. We've got someone on our league who has got a full bench of buys, and that's before injuries. So there is going to be people out there who are struggling that don't have a choice, that are going to have to roll the dice with Garrett Wilson. But if you've got a better choice that you're going back and forth with, I'd maybe go with the other. I could be wrong. Usually am.
For me, Garrett Wilson's a starter. I start him. I
Yeah?
think I think he's got a tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills. He's scored very consistently over the past few weeks, fantasy wise. And I think now with the injury of Von Miller and the Bills, Mike White's going to have a bit more time to find those passes. He's not going to have Von Miller breathing down his neck. So yeah, for me, he's a starter.
Yeah, and sticking with Mike White, Drew, in terms of Mike White, for anyone that's a Lamar Jackson owner, that it could miss multiple weeks, or there've been a Jimmy Garoppolo owner who is now out for the fantasy season, Mike White has got 2 very good matchups in the next couple of weeks. So there's going to be leagues go into fantasy playoffs in the next couple of weeks and guys are going to be panicking because they don't have a quarterback. If he's on your waiver wire, go and pick him up, go and stash him, make sure nobody else in your league gets him because of the matchups that he's got coming into the fantasy playoff season. I'd be going and getting him. I'll tell you just now. So next week, White has got, if my phone hasn't froze, I wish I hadn't said this now. Right, I'm in.
I wish
Next
you had
week-
said this now.
Yes, next week Mike White has got Detroit, who are number 32 against the quarterback, and then the week after, week 16, Jacksonville Jaguars, who are number 26 against the quarterback. Two very good matchups. So I'd be going and getting Mike White if he's still available on your waivers. Producer David, who's next up in the comment section with questions. Okay, Drew, are you going to win your matchup this week so we can have a fun matchup next week? That comes from Toasty.
Oh, it depends, Toasty. It's a very, very tight one this week. I think whoever wins the matchup against me and Steve-O gets into the playoffs. I think this is a deciding one because he's beating me currently on head-to-head. But Toasty, you know your record against me. It's not very good. What is it? Three losses and 1 win. So we'll need to wait till next week and see what happens.
I know, and there is history here. So for anyone that's watching it, is in our fantasy league, last season Toasty rested players so that he would take a defeat and he would face who he felt was the easier opponent in the playoffs, and Drew. Didn't turn out so well for him. He came up against Drew, who knocked him out the playoffs. I mean, Toasty was in fantasy football form that you had never seen in all your life. Gets bombed out the playoffs against Drew, who then went on to win it and is the reigning champion of our league.
He lost 3 games all season, Kieran.
How many to you?
3.
Love it. Okay, who's next up in the comments? Let's see. Question-wise, we've got a question here. Would OBJ not being fit until January discount the Giants as a potential destination? I feel like he should just take what he's offered. He's a risk. Kind of covered that about 5 minutes ago, but for me, I'd love to see him back at the Giants. But yeah, mid-January is just not going to be good enough for the Giants. Possibly next season, if he can prove that he's healthy, a return would be possible. But I think the list of suitors for OBJ is wearing thin at the moment. Let's see, have we got any more questions? Last one. How many are in your league? Is there an availability of decent players to pick up week to week? So our league was 10 teams and we increased it to 12. Drew was one of the ones that came in the second year, and the reason we increased it to 12 and we added another flex spot so that waiver wires were a lot more competitive. The league was more competitive in terms of trading. We wanted to make it as competitive as possible. So coming into week 14, I think we've got 6 teams, 2 teams already in the playoffs and 6 teams who could grab the last spots. It's turned into a very, very competitive league. Our top 6 go into a playoff. We place 1 and 2 getting a bye, and the bottom 4 play out for relegation, with the bottom 3 of that playoff picture going down into our Division 2. So yeah, it's competitive as it can be, isn't it, Drew?
Yeah, it's very, very competitive. Each week on the waivers, you would say slim pickings, but it's just because a lot of the bigger players are away, and a lot of the people that play in the league do have a good bit of knowledge. So if you look at a player that you were to go and pick up, like Traylon Burks, he was probably a good example. He was picked up very early on in our league because obviously somebody had obviously heard a wee bit about him, and they're like, right, okay, I'm going to take a punt on him. Same as, like, you know what I mean, you look at all the rookies. Johan Dotson, I had picked him up at the start of the season. Drake London was away in the draft at the start of the season. So yeah, I think that is the difference as well. But you compare our division, Division 1 to Division 2, and the spread of players that they've got in Division 2 just with 2 less teams is unbelievable. Obviously,
Yeah.
Greg, my brother's in Division 2, and when he tells me his team, he's like, who do you think I should play? Who do you think I should start? Or who do you think I should pick up in the waivers or whatever? It's really difficult because every single player that you've got is a starter. So it makes it more difficult to make those decisions. And when people are on bye weeks, that's the only good thing. There is players available there on the waivers, but I prefer a 12-team league, I think, compared to the 10-team.
Yeah, it's a lot more tactical, but it is good. We've got a group of guys that are all very engaged. No one's tailing off and falling away from it, which is good, and that's why we love fantasy football. But Drew, not to keep you too much longer. You were a last-minute stand-in. You've been absolutely brilliant, and you've saved the day for the Boomer Bust Fantasy Football Podcast. But as ever, we're going to finish off with a game. You can see plenty of viewers. Can see plenty of you guys watching. Make sure you like the video and make sure you subscribe. You subscribe to our channel, right? And also get involved in the comments. We're going to get a wee game of Tom Brady acting shady. So, Drew, if I was to say to you, Bucks quarterback is acting out of sorts up a back alley, what would you say?
Tom Brady acting shady.
Okay, so the purpose is I'll give Drew a question and the answer has got to rhyme, obviously an NFL theme to it. So the first question, are you ready?
Yeah.
Cardinals quarterback is making a fine Indian cuisine.
Kyler Murray's making a curry.
Boom. Right off the mark. Well done. They do get harder than that, by the way.
Okay.
Make sure you're answering in the comments as well. Next one up. You ready?
Well, I give them a bit of time, Kieran, so they can answer in the comments.
At least act a bit. Jets running
Okay.
back has a case of the runs. Jets running back has a case of the runs.
I can't remember his first name. What's his Zamir or something like that? Zamir Knight's needing a shite.
I'm going to give you that. Well done. Bam White is taking a shite.
Bam White.
Bam Knight, not Bam White.
That's it.
Did I say that again? Did I actually say that again?
Every time.
Right. I'm only kidding. I'm back.
You did get off the eggnog here.
I know. Oh, it's the mulled wine I like. Third and final question. Dolphins quarterback is eating a meringue-based dessert.
Oh, that's a good one. Tua Tangalova's eating a pavlova.
Well done. Producer David, what went on there? Do that again.
I absolutely just forgot to change one of the graphics. I mean, you were totally right, but I've just got one of the graphics from last week for some reason.
Right, okay. Joey Sly's eating an American pie. Anyway, Drew, it's been fantastic. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. And like I say, please make sure you're subscribing. Please make sure you're sharing this and also liking it. And anyway, guys, thank you very much and goodbye.